Welcome back. We're continuing our conversations ahead of the March primaries for your local elected officials. And of those is the race for Tazewell County Auditor. And joining me today is one of the candidates for that, Mr. Grimm. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You are going against Shelly Haranka, who's been in that position for a few years now. I want to ask you, your background. You were on the board for 10 years or so.
I was.
What do you believe qualifies you to be the Tazewell County Auditor?
Sure. I think one of the best things that does is the ability to communicate with everybody. I've come from the board. I know what they look for. I know how to get along with them. I know how to get along with the other elected officials in the county. There's so much discussion, confusion, complaining, arguing that there's just no talking. And I have the ability to talk to them. There's people I've disagreed with on the board numerous times, and we still get along and we still converse because the county business has to get done.
You're talking about complaining, arguing. Right now, there is a lawsuit, I think actually two lawsuits, between the county auditor position and the Tazewell County Board, mainly board chairman and others, that started 2 years ago with Haranka saying that the county took away vital resources for her to be able to do her job effectively when she came into that office. And obviously, again, a lawsuit triggers arguments. Mm-hmm. You're saying that has led to a lack of communication. If you were to be in that position, how would you change that?
Sure. In 2015, the then auditor announced that she wasn't going to continue in the office, and that's Vicki Grassoff.
She'd been in about, what, 20 years?
20 years. She'd been in there, and she did a great job. But being in the office for that amount of time, she just grew the scope, and it's one of those things that wasn't in a bad thing. It wasn't in a negative way. It was as computers were coming more into play, and there was different accounting systems and things done. Her and a few of the other officials and different people would always just step up and take care of the job that needs to be done. And so what happened is that she'd spent so much time in doing it that when she announced that she wasn't going to retire, or she was going to retire and not run for the election again, we sat down as a board and looked at, okay, how has this job grown past the scope? And that's one of the things that we sat down with the state's attorney and then Vicki, the current auditor, and some others, and we tried to figure out how do we make this job strictly what the scope of the state statutes are. And that's what we did. We cut it down to just what the scope is. Nothing extra, no job creep. And that's probably the biggest thing that I think when we came into it, that's what we expected somebody to come in and do. And instead it kind of came in as, I want everything back, and I want to be able to just do exactly as Vicki had done. And that's not what the state says. And that's the part where now we just wanted somebody to come in and do the job. Instead, it grew into lawsuits, it grew into different things. You've taken this away from me, and it's not helping anybody. It's not benefiting. The job's not being done at all. We now have lawsuits. They're over $240,000 as of this past January. And it's like watching DC or watching the different places where there's just gridlock and nothing being done. These jobs aren't being done at all. And so what I want to do is I just want to communicate with the board, talk to the other elected officials. There's a terminal in the treasurer's office that hasn't been used in 2.5 years to audit that office. These jobs need to be done, and that's just what I'm trying to accomplish.
And I've had Shelly Haranka on here a few times in the past because of that lawsuit. She'll come on because she's also a candidate within this, I believe, next week or later this week. And I know her argument is looking at, I believe it was roughly $93,000 that were slashed from that budget to employees from that committee, and you're saying that you were part of the conversations to look at how to slim that role down based upon what you're saying the statutes allow strictly for that. One of the other things that's come up based on that and is that the board just this last election cycle voted to place a referendum on the ballot to give people the option to eliminate that position, and board chairman Dave Zimmerman has come on and said they would have hired an outside group to look over that. You would have been on the board at that time. How did you vote in terms of whether or not to place that on the ballot for people? And then what were your views when it comes to, because Zimmerman's very open that they were really considering bringing an outside group. What were your views then on his plan, if that would have been approved, to bring in an outside agency to look over the finances?
Sure. I was on the board at that time, and I did vote to send it as a referendum to the people. Some of the people seem to think that the board voted to eliminate the position, and that's not correct. What we did was we voted to put it on a referendum to the ballot so that people could decide. We did the same thing in 2012 with the county recorder and the county clerk's office, and the people voted to get rid of it. As far as Dave's, how he was going to bring people in, it never came to a point like that, so there's no way to say how we would have looked at it or what we would have done at that time. But overall, the situation was, I'm kind of a small government guy, and it's one of those things that, look, I don't think the job should be more than what it is, and as a state statute, and then do the people want to continue to have it? And since they do, it's one of those, now the office needs to function. We know what people want. They want this office. Okay, now we have an office that hasn't functioned for 3.5 years. How do we make this work? And that's what I'm moving from. Okay, now we know what the people want. How do we make this work?
And speaking about how making work, you posted a very interesting video, roughly 7 or so minutes long on your Facebook page. And I can bring this up too now because Shelly Haranka shared it on one of her pages as well, where you are listing out 11 duties for the Tazewell County Auditor's position, partly because you say people don't fully understand what the auditor is supposed to do. And then you were looking at, I believe, a document or an email that you say that Haranka sent to the board listing out how she's been able to do those duties. For you, in speaking about, a lot of those things, you said that in quoting her appearance in this email, I haven't seen that email, but apparently her saying that the duties either aren't being done or aren't being fulfilled. If you were to get into those roles, hearing her, complaints that she doesn't have the resources to do it, why do you believe you will be able to do those things as efficiently or better than what she is doing with the same level of resources?
Sure. It's a great question. And the thing is, you said earlier that she's been on here talking about the lawsuits. The thing is, she's been on here more than she's come to the board and talked about the different parts that she needs for the job. Committees, as far as the finance and the HR committee, what she needs to do the job, full board. The county board meets every month, 21 people sitting down to meet. And you talked about the email. Every now and then she says she sent an email out, and she did send an email out. The one I was referencing was from some time ago. But there's not a lot of good conversation. She doesn't come talk to the board about what needs to be done. She expects them to come to her. And that's not the way to approach this. It's kind of like I tell my kids, it's one of those things that if you really want something, you need to go after it. And if she really wants to fix this problem, she knows where these people meet. She knows how to do it, and she just knows what to say, but it doesn't happen that way. So those 11 jobs that I listed out, almost everybody that I talked to is like, okay, so what does the auditor do? And the reason I put it together was so this way they could sit there and they can see, okay, it's got 11 jobs. Here they are, and it's broken out into 2 sections, 9 and then 2. So there's 2 separate videos about what they are. And it just try to help people understand what's going on and then what's actually being done in the office and what needs to be done.
All right. With your position in the past on the board, obviously you made a lot of decisions. You worked with board chairman David Zimmerman and others, and a part of the auditor's position is kind of looking at finances and keeping the board in check. Because of your past relationship, being on the board, why should people believe that you'll be able to, in a way, stay
impartial?
And stay impartial to what's going on the board, because you used to be on the board.
Right. One of the things that the county board is a financial job. I mean, it's one of those that the job of it is to dispense the money to the different departments, to the different elected officials to do their jobs. There's respect between each of these offices and the different places to do. It's not a legislative board. It's not anything like that. So, I have a respect for the board. the board has a respect for everybody in the other offices, except for one or two. And it's one of those, it's a mutual respect thing. Everybody understands the job that the other person is supposed to do, and they're all trying to work together. I mean, this is a county board. Again, this isn't state, this isn't federal, this isn't, we're gonna fly off to our own districts and our own areas. We see each other at basketball games and in the grocery stores and the libraries. Everywhere that you go, you see these people. So it's people you work with. Everybody wants this to work out. It's just a matter of how we go about it. And as I said, there's a level of respect. If you show respect, you gain respect, and it works together.
All right, my last question to you is just simply for you to, again, explain to the voters why you believe that they should choose you to be the next auditor of Tazewell County.
Sure, I appreciate that. From day one when I walk in the office, the first thing that I'm able to do is to stop the lawsuits. The lawsuits, again, are coming from a lack of communication. These people meet every month, to be able to talk and how to tell them what needs to be done, and they can communicate it back. But that's not going back and forth. So I can stop those from day one. Also on day one, I get to actually start to do the job that hasn't been done for 3.5 years. It's just a matter of making this office work as it's supposed to for Tazewell County.
All right. Well, Brett Grimm, running for Tazewell County Auditor, thank you so much for being here and talking with us about your candidacy.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.